Who's
That's
Corky?
hysterical.
And I'm like, he's a famous surfer. He's he's a stuntman. I don't know.
Yeah.
They just were terrible to work with. I mean, I don't ever talk crap about people I work with.
Yeah.
But those two were just so awful, and being so young and being so excited to be working on a show that I grew up, watching.
Yeah.
To get on set and go, wow, these people are horrible. I was just like, this is wow. I'm never going to do television again. Working alongside Jack Palance and Peter Boyle and Charlton Heston and Tim Matheson. I was up against Armand Asante and Danny Glover.
And how old are you?
14, 15 when I did the miniseries.
You're moving too fast. You're moving too fast.
Sorry.
Welcome back to another episode of 90who10. I am Jessica Entner, and I've got my co-host here,
Dan Eisenstein.
And today we have a very special guest, one who has been mentioned many a time on the show, probably also a very good friend of David Faustino's, and was in a fantastic show that I grew up watching as well as most people in our friend group. Parker Lewis Can't Lose His Own. Corin Nemec. There you go.
Awesome.
Was that good?
That was fantastic. I was mesmerized.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that is it for our show. No, just kidding. So yeah, Corin, how do you and Dan know each other?
Oh, same social circles.
Yeah.
We ran in and during high school and after high school, and we knew all the same pot dealers. Now.
Yeah,
No,
pretty much.
Yeah,
I don't know if you know this, but I do remember the very first time I ever met you, and it was at the premiere of Pump Up the Volume. That was the first time I met you. And
far out, man.
You guys actually have something very much in common. So Jessica actually set me up with my senior prom date, but Corin actually let me borrow his girlfriend at the time, who became his wife, to go to the junior prom.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Your parents were in the business too, right?
Yeah, both of them in different areas. My dad was and still is a production designer. He obviously way back then in the 80s, he was a art director and assistant art director. He worked on Goonies, The Abyss, The Saint, The Shadow, Patriot Games, Twister.
Wow.
His first job as a production designer, I believe, was on Another 48 Hours with Eddie Murphy, who I actually worked with around the same time period on his first venture into TV, starring in a TV special Eddie Murphy produced called What's Alan Watching, that was created and written by Tommy Schlamme, directed it. And it was one of the original writers from Saturday Night Live. His name will come to me. Anyway, it was an incredible cast. I was really young at the time. I think I was only maybe 14, 15 years old. And it was with playing Fran Drescher's brother. Peter Michael Getz and Barbara Barry were my parents in it. Pauly Shore was my nemesis in it.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
It was a wild comedy. It was great. It actually kind of led to me getting Parker Lewis a number of years later, because Clyde Phillips and Robert Lewis were over at CBS at the same time. He had been doing Houston Nights over there. And I did What's Alan Watching for CBS, and they saw What's Alan Watching and loved it, and they were assigned to come up with a new teen comedy, and they came up with Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
But wait, we're getting ahead. You're moving too fast. You're moving too fast.
Sorry.
Yeah, too fast. Because first of all, I want to touch on your mom was in the business too, right?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. And she was in. So my dad was in that side of the business.
Yeah.
My mom was a graphic designer in the music business, and that led into the theater business. So we were in Atlanta, Georgia, and she was working for Standing Room Only, which was a big concert promotion company, doing poster design for them for the different acts that were coming through, and they were doing like huge shows at the Omni. And we were talking, Jay Giles Band, Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, Hall and Oates.
Oh yeah.
It's Iron Maiden, I mean, they also owned the Agora Ballroom, which was a really famous, and a few other concert venues, small concert venues, like 3,500 people or whatever. And we actually went and saw Prince at the Agora
Oh,
Ballroom
that's
perform
amazing.
before his first album came out.
That's
Then
good.
she went on to work with. Then she went on to work at the Fox Theater in Atlanta, which is owned by the Nederlanders, and they also own the Pantages in
Sure.
Hollywood. But the Fox tragically, no, the Agora Ballroom burnt down in Atlanta tragically. But the Fox. She was there doing graphic design and transferred to the Pantages in Los Angeles in the mid '80s, and that's what moved myself and my sister Anastasia out there with her, where my dad was already living coincidentally and already involved in the arts and entertainment business as well, coincidentally, because when he graduated from the School of Architecture at the University of Arkansas, where my mom got her bachelor's in graphic design. That's where they met. And his game plan was to become a professional architect, and he did do that. He did achieve that. He
Were
did
they together?
some buildings and stuff during college, not after college.
Okay, so your dad lived out here. They were divorced.
Yeah, they split up shortly after college, and my mom moved to Atlanta. He moved to Los Angeles.
Got it.
Right on.
Okay.
And so when you moved out here, you got the acting bug a little bit?
Well, when I moved to LA, I mean, I already was interested in acting, especially because of my father's work on Goonies. When I saw the Goonies, it was the year before the year of or year before I moved out to Los Angeles. And I understood the dynamics of what it took to make a movie, because I visited my dad out in Los Angeles during summer vacations and went on sets that he was working on at the time. I know I visited the set of V when he was a set designer on that TV series, and was on the movie. I forget. I'm not sure if it was called Hell of the West when it came out, but it was a big movie. He was a set designer on. He was a few other ones, but anyway, so I understood that what it took to put it together, and as an actor, you got to not only perform as this character that was something outside of yourself, living a life outside of yourself, which was interesting to me, but being able to be fully costumed, propped up, and on a location that was set designed to be as real as it's scripted to be. And that always excited me. And I got to LA and started at Walter Reed Junior High School, where I was taking graphic design as an elective, actually, with a great teacher, Mr. Menendez. I took it there for 2 years, 8th and 9th grade. But in 8th grade, one of my classmates was this actor, David Van Gorder, who was in Over the Top with Sylvester Stallone and some other films, but also was really well known at the time for being Waldo in the Van Halen "Hot for Teacher" video.
Okay, yeah.
Oh my God.
Coincidentally, he was in a very reputable young actors workshop called Center Stage LA that was directed by Kevin McDermott, who he taught everybody. I mean, I can't even, especially all the actors coming out of Nickelodeon, Disney, and all that. He was definitely taught a whole bunch of them. He had a great method that really dealt with a lot of improvisation. He would have us memorize scenes, of course, and rehearse scenes and stuff, but he would have us forget about the scene, and he would have us improv the entire scene, beginning, middle, and end, and just do it as just the performer as the character. And what I mean? And we did a lot of other improvisational work. He actually had an improvisational troupe called Off the Wall that was all kids under the age of 18. So you had to be 13 to 17. And I performed with them a few times at Laugh Factory and Comedy Store. And so, I think those are the only two places I performed at. Or it might have been the Improv and the Laugh Factory. I can't remember. It's been so long ago. But anyway, it was a great time. I learned a lot. And shortly after joining the Center Stage LA group, I did a showcase for agents and managers, and signed one immediately, Abrams, Rubeloff, and Lawrence. And I started auditioning right away. I landed the first audition I went on was for a Suzuki motorcycle commercial that Paul Ventura was casting, and I landed that my very first audition. I landed the commercial, and it turned out to be their big commercial for the 1986 Super Bowl.
Well,
so that was pretty rad. I was,
awesome.
and then I did some other commercials, for like McDonald's and Lee Jeans and Kool-Aid and some other stuff, and Coca-Cola, and they did a guest spot on Ernie Reyes Jr.'s series Sidekicks with Gilliard. Playing a kid that he kind of like uses his martial arts skills against in order to get on the soccer team,
That was such a cool show when we were kids, the Sidekicks. That was like
yeah,
the
man,
show.
it should have lasted a lot longer. It's a shame it didn't. It was a cool show, and Ernie's such a great guy. We became very good friends. We ended up going to high school together for real. Later on in life at Excelsior School, which is a whole nother story.
Well, I knew you're friends with Ernie, and I'm glad to hear that he's doing well. Yeah. And then around that time, I mean, the first time that I kind of became aware of you, even before I knew you, was when you were on Webster.
Yeah, that came after I got Webster. I didn't even audition for it. I got it because I had just gotten off of the movie Tucker.
Oh, was that really? So Webster was after Tucker?
Yeah, Webster was after Tucker.
Okay.
I mean, Tucker came out. It must have came out even after I had done Webster because it took so long for the post-production on that movie. But within months of wrapping Tucker, I found myself on the abysmal set of Webster with Mam and George, those two horrifically just monstrously cruel beings. Emmanuel Lewis was fantastic, and the other people around were great. They just were terrible to work with. I mean, I don't ever talk crap about people I work with, but those two were just so awful, and being so young and being so excited to be working on a show that I grew up, watching, to get on set and go, wow, these people are horrible. They're terrible to me. They're terrible to everybody. They're just terrible people. It was a misery because I had just gotten done working on Tucker with Francis Ford Coppola playing the son of Jeff Bridges and the brother of Christian Slater with Martin Landau and Joan Allen and Frederick Forrester and Mako and Elias Koteas. And I mean, what a dynamic cast, and the experience of working with Coppola and Vittorio Storaro and the whole team up there was next level. And then to end up on that set, 3 months later, I was just like, this is wow. I'm never going to do television again.
Yeah, wow.
When I finished up Webster, not too long after that is when I did that TV special for Eddie Murphy Productions.
Right.
And that was possibly going to become a series, but due to complications creatively between Eddie Murphy Productions and CBS, they just released it as a one-off. Bob Tischler, that was the writer that I was trying to think of from Saturday Night Live, who created the show.
You did something that I remember, and I don't know if it was before or after Parker Lewis, but I remember the story really well.
I know where you're going
with this. And it really, really, I think for most kids in the 80s that grew up seeing kids on milk cartons, it resonated in a very, very real way, and you were fantastic in it. I remember watching it, going, "Wow, this kid's really good."
I know my first name is Steven.
I know my first name is Steven. That was, because that was straight from the headlines. What was that?
Yeah, well, I did that. I mean, I got that. Right after I finished. This comedy with the Eddie Murphy Productions, literally within maybe a couple of months of wrapping that, I landed, I Know My First Name is Steven. So What's On Watching hadn't even aired yet. And I got that. And I'm probably lucky it didn't because it was such a really broad comedy, and the character was so different than What's On Watch. Then I Know My First Name is Steven, playing a real life character, of course, as well. I did work with the incredible acting teacher John Lynn, creating Stephen Stainer as my own version of who that he was, based on what the script was telling us.
I don't know if everyone remembers who that was. I'm curious if you can just walk us through the storyline, because it really was.
Stephen Stainer was a young kid who was kidnapped in the 70s by Kenneth Parnell, who was a pedophile, and he he was kidnapped and brainwashed. He was 7 years old when he was kidnapped, and over a period of years, he was brainwashed into believing that he was his adopted father. He was adopted by him, and that his parents gave him up, and all of this stuff. And he came to believe that over time. But when he was 14 years old, the pedophile couldn't help himself and needed to have another child. And so he went and kidnapped an even younger boy. And Stephen Stainer, knowing what had happened to him was going to happen to this boy, helped him to escape and escorted him to the nearest police station, where he dropped him off, but was soon after arrested, having been spotted by the cops. And once he was arrested, dropping this child off at the police station, he confessed to them that he was certain that he was also, kidnapped when he was this kid's age, when he was really young. And that's how they figured out who he was. And he was returned home. At 14 years old, after having been, held captive by a sexual predator for 7 years of his life.
Yeah.
It's a sad story,
it's
too.
An awful story.
He had a really hard time readjusting to his life, and ended up dying in a motorcycle accident.
I remember.
And then his brother
passed away the night before the Emmys. We had been nominated for the best miniseries. Larry Elkin, the director, and
you were nominated, correct? Right?
Nominated for for best supporting actor. I was up against Armand Asante and Danny Glover.
And how old are you?
14, 15 when I did the miniseries. So when by the time it came out and the Emmys were going on, I was like 15 or 16.
And there was a lot of hype around you at that time.
Oh, there was a lot, and then it was pretty exciting. Shortly after that, I got cast by Richard Sarafian in this epic, futuristic sci-fi action drama, working alongside Jack Palance and Peter Boyle and Charlton Heston and Tim Matheson. And although it was for the late 80s, 1980, 89, it was like a $48 million film. In today's standards, that'd be like a $260 million film or something. It was huge. And I was convinced at that point that movie was going to, be the thing that's going to launch me into the stratosphere. And oddly enough, around that same time, when that film was in post-production, the offer came in for Parker Lewis Can't Lose. And again, that goes back to What's Alan Watching, because Lon Diamond and Clyde Phillips, when they had created Parker Lewis for CBS ended up turning down the show, and the rights reverted back to them, and they shopped it later on. And this was before Ferris Bueller's Day Off came out, when they originally created the show for CBS, but CBS didn't want it. A year or so later, Ferris Bueller comes out. It's a huge hit. That whole kind of thing is good. And then that movie 3 O'Clock High came out.
I love that movie.
That's what the cinematography and style of Parker Lewis was based on.
They broke the fourth wall. I remember it being one of the first shows that did like direct talking to the camera.
What a great cast too. I mean, it was you and Billy Jacoby, and we had Bobby on our show.
Abe Ben Ruby,
he's a great guy. I love Abe. And
Taj was great.
Taj Johnson went to Beverly High with us.
Melanie Chardoff.
Yeah. A really great cast.
Great cast, and so the they had seen me as being right for the role of Parker Lewis because of my work as Alan Hofstetter in What's Alan Watching, because they were both very similar. The shows were stylistically very similar, very very kind of same tone, and it wasn't a sitcom, which was my greatest fear. So when the offer came in for Parker Lewis, I turned it down because my experience on Webster and on doing multi-camera sitcoms, these half-hour sitcoms, was like so creatively, draining and a misery for me. I thought that's what the Parker Lewis was going to be, and I finally sat down with Clyde and Lon and Robert Lewis and and they explained to me that they weren't doing a half-hour sitcom. They got wind that was the issue for me. I'm not doing a multi-camera half-hour sitcom. I'm not going to do it to myself,
Yeah.
And I just finished this movie. I just got nominated for an Emmy. I was like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you were the top of the world.
I don't
You're
need
like,
this. You know what I
no,
mean?
thank you very much. I mean,
No, there was a lot of
other
hype.
things will be coming along soon. Yeah.
Totally, yeah. But then they explained to me what they wanted to do. That it was going to be like shooting a film. It's going to be a single camera, 4-wall world.
Yeah.
It will be half hour. It'll be fast paced, but it's going to be like 3 o'clock high. And as soon as they said 3 o'clock high, I understood what they were trying to do, and I was ready to go, and I was so happy I signed up for it, and it became a great cult classic for the time period. And
was it also on Fox?
It was on Fox. Yeah, well, that was the thing. It was on, and unfortunately, it was during the time period when they still relied on the Nielsen ratings and the Nielsen boxes, and by then they were so antiquated, and so many kids had not only their own TVs when they were off at college that didn't have those damn boxes on them, but at home it was very common by the early '90s for there to be 2 TVs in households, especially middle class households, and that for one for the kids, one for the adults. So the ratings were very unfair to the success of Parker Lewis, because I saw the success of it when I was out doing press junkets and appearances and different things like that.
It was a big show.
It was the quintessential
see it on the streets, but the numbers didn't show, and that's why it eventually got canceled, because the numbers seemed to negate the success. But it was actually in reverse. It was far more successful.
I think it says a lot about our generation. We've been discounted since we were children, so they didn't even bother. This is what the kids are watching, and now we're so consumed with what's Gen Z and Gen Alpha up to. So it is interesting, because that show was reminiscent of the movies that we were watching and that we were liking. And it's funny that it's that show. Parker Lewis Can't Lose, Freaks and Geeks. I mean, there's definitely a chunk of shows that had a very shorter lifespans than they should have had.
That was very quintessential 90s. Like you said, they broke the fourth wall. There was it was very...
It was funny. It was irreverent. Yeah. It was one of those shows. And we had David Faustino on, and we were talking about Married with Children, and the early days of Fox was, The Simpsons and Tracy Ullman and Married with Children.
Yeah.
And they all put Fox on the map. And then Fox had some credibility. So I remember that being I remember Fox being the network that took the chances on these types of shows. Anyway, I loved the show. It was great. I can't remember anything about it, but that's just because my mind is slowly evaporating.
No, it hasn't. It never really made, because we only did 3 seasons. We did 78 episodes in total, which is, it's roughly 10, 20 episodes under what they want for syndication for it to really, really revolve out and be out there. So USA Network picked it up a year or so after we went off the air. They ran all 3 seasons back to back. Basically every day there was an episode for a year and a half or whatever, and they played the hell out of it for that short time. And then it went off the air in the US all the way up until Sony bought Crackle.com, and then they started running it on Crackle.com. Well, no, and it would have been, that could have been a lot of fun and great for me, but because that particular platforming didn't exist, so there's no residual income associated with any ad rev that it may have received on Crackle when they put it on there.
Right.
So
you find it anywhere?
I was happy to see it. I don't. It's very difficult to find. If you can find it, it's probably YouTube hijacks or something, or but otherwise you have to have the DVD copies of it, which were mainly made over in Germany, and you have to click on the English translation of it instead of watching the German dub.
Get the middle-aged moms that come up to you though and say, "Oh, Parker Lewis."
Sometimes, I mean, over in the show played a lot better and played a lot longer over in Europe,
Okay.
in different parts of Europe, France, Germany, some other
That
parts
makes
of northern
sense.
Spain, and oddly enough, it was like a huge hit over in Israel too. It played a lot over in Israel, even way beyond its course. I mean, the 3 seasons it played so well that those 3 seasons weren't enough. They were perfectly willing to start the show over again from season one the following year after season 3
That's
ran its
awesome.
course. And
That's awesome.
they'd run it again, right? So it ran for several generations out there, which certainly was odd. It was kind of like that David Hasselhoff effect. I'm famous in Germany,
Right.
so, but
Speaking of other countries, I have to ask because I don't know your background. Where's your name from? Corin Nemec. It's a very
yeah,
unusual name.
yeah, Nemec. My birth name, Nemec is Czech. It's in Czech, and it means of German descent or from
Right.
Germany. They called them Nemeches,
Nemec.
and some people say that it was a derogatory term, but I'll leave that to etymologists. And then my first name Corin, my mother bestowed upon me is a Gaelic word for a blackbird or a raven, a Corin.
Yep.
In Old French, it's Corbin, and then the feminine version is Corinne or Corina, but the name itself, I think that she originally heard it because my mom was born over in the UK in Liverpool, and during the time when she was growing up as a youth, Corin Redgrave, who was Vanessa Redgrave's brother, was the talk of the town as a Shakespearean actor and an actor, on the stage and in theater there in the UK. And I think, even though she says that's not where she got the idea from, I think it was.
Yeah, it's funny. My mom was also British, and that's why I asked because she was Welsh. I don't know if I think it's not Welsh, but I know that it's of that region. And I was like, that's an interesting name. You don't hear often in America. So I needed to get the etymology of your name.
But when you were a kid, you went by Corky, right?
Yeah, my grandmother nicknamed me that when I was a baby. I was when I was too young to let her know my opinion of that nickname, and it stuck. But by the time I was able to talk, they were already calling me Corky.
Yeah.
Because I was in the South. It was like a quirky kid. It's almost like quirky,
Yeah.
Corky. It's and I just ended up being called it. Plus, I was named. My birth name was Joseph Charles Nemec the Fourth. And my mom, in her separation with my dad, really didn't want to refer to me as Joseph. So she was happy to oblige my grandmother's whims, and everybody in the family started referring to me as Corky, including my sister and cousins and everyone else. And so when I started acting, even though when I moved to Los Angeles, I had shaken off the name Corky, except around my immediate family, because when I started up junior high school, on the roll call list, I was listed as Joseph Nemec. And so when they would do roll call, they'd be like, Joseph Nemec. I'm like, yes, I'm here.
Yeah, that's great. I love
and
it.
then friends I knew from junior high on knew me as Joseph. And then they'd come over to my house and hear my mom and sister call me Corky. And they'd be like, yo, dude, what's up with who's
That's
Corky?
hysterical.
And I'm like, he's a famous surfer. He's he's a stuntman. I don't know.
Yeah, I love it.
So you have
So
multiple aliases.
when I started acting at a young age, my first agent thought that the name Joseph was too plain, too run of the mill, and then my mom suggested Corky Nemec, and I was like, ah. And she's like, well, how about Corin? You always wanted to be called Corin. And I was like, yeah, that's fine, that's fine. That's fine. So they chose Corin Corky Nemec for some reason at first, and as soon as I was old enough to protest in vain, I got my name changed to just Corin Nemec.
I like
After the miniseries, I know my first name is Steven. I couldn't stand watching when I saw that miniseries come out and saw the name Corky on it. I was like, that's not me. I don't want to be represented as Corky. I want to.
But you've called him Corky.
Anyway,
Did you have
what's funny?
friends that called
everybody
you that
did.
too?
I sucked it up and I accepted it.
As a teenager, it was I remember people calling you Cork. Cork was like the nickname. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But then, Dave turns to me one day and he's like, Corin. I'm like, huh? What?
Yeah,
but
who?
but it's Corin.
That's so funny.
And speaking of Dave, you guys were and talking about Crackle, Starving, which I think was a really, really good show and super, super underrated. So Dave and Corin had a show on Crackle called Starving.
Okay.
And it was about the two of them, and kind of it hyper exaggerated what they were doing after their TV success.
Okay.
So Dave,
Okay.
was broke now, and Corin was living
And I
with
was
him.
broker.
Yeah, he was broker, and it was really, really, really good show. I mean, they had some really great episodes. I don't know if you can even catch that on Crackle anymore, but I mean, Stealing Alan Thicke was genius. The Married with Children episode where Dave goes back and they've brought everybody back except they've hired Seth Green to play Bud Bundy. I mean, really some good stuff on that show.
When the line comes up, when David's first line comes up, and he's sitting there next to Buck the dog, and he says his line, and you hear somebody's that too familiar voice off camera say the same line, and then it cuts to Seth Green sitting across from him. It was hilarious. But that really came because me and David, we had done a few films together. We'd done a National Lampoon film, RoboDoc, and we had done a couple of stoner comedies,
Killer Buds, right? Yeah,
and then one, High Hopes, and so we were trying to work that sort of duo, comedy duo angle. And when we saw the success of, even though we tried to do a couple of film things as well, when we saw the success of like the two Corys and stuff and all these reality shows, we were just appalled, you know what I mean? and we thought, you know what, it would be so funny to just ham the reality shows. So what we got together with a writing partner of ours, Todd Bringawat, and we came up with this whole series of these mock reality shows. One was called like Dave's "You're Not My Best Friend Anymore" show or something like that. And it was like, Dave's tired of me being his best friend, so he's going to audition new best friends, and they're going to come and live in his we had it as a huge mansion in the hills and all this, and they have to go through all these trials and tribulations that he puts them through and if they're bad or naughty, they got to go stay in the doghouse, which is like this mock-up oversized doghouse in the backyard where you have to sit with a chain around your neck and eat out of a dog bowl for like 20, all this stupid stuff, then. And we there was a number of other ones that we pitched. I can't remember what they were, but like that. And we actually went out with these to a number of networks and everything. We got in the door with the pitches and whatnot. And even though the pitch rooms were filled with hilarious laughter, none of those ideas got picked up. But they did come back to us with like their version of a show. And it was always like, me and Jay would look at each other going, you know what? If we do their version, we're dead. We're never going to work again in this industry. It'll be over for us if we ever did any of their versions of what, they thought, like the two Corys type of reality
but
show.
Starving was good. It had some legs. I think it really did.
That's what happened is, so Starving, we ended up hooking up with Sam Cass, who was one of the writer producers from Seinfeld and stuff. He's Robbie Cass's brother as well, who was Dave's longtime manager, still is, great guy. So we ended up connecting up with him because some kind of social conversation happened during this time period that Sam got wind of or was party to through his brother, about what we were trying to do. And he's like, so we ended up all sitting down together. And Sam was basically like, listen, if you're gonna burn your careers, with these shows, you got to go all the way. You can't sit here and pussyfoot around and dance around the flames. You got to like basically cast your whole entire self into the fire. You got to go for total broke and make this the mockery of all mockeries. And we ended up pulling together some money, and we shot a teaser for it, like a 2-3 minute teaser for it that fortunately, once we showed that, and we had Ed O'Neill in the teaser. Part of the teaser was that scene that was in one of the episodes where David sits down to have lunch with him, and tries to hit him up for money, and he gets furious about it. And then I come over and sit down and start eating out of his bowl of food.
Yeah.
And that was, we ended up shooting some more stuff for that and made that into one of the episodes. But as the teaser, that got us in the door to a number of places. But at Sony Television, they had just bought Crackle, and they saw that as a perfect, launching vehicle for Crackle.com. And we did giant numbers for them, but the ad rev deal that we had was something that they mistakenly signed. And so when they realized how much money they were going to owe us with the success of the show, they pulled the show. That's why the show got pulled.
It's too bad. The show was great. And you guys, they had so many great guest stars. I mean, Ed Asner was on it. Like I said, Alan Thicke, Gilbert Gottfried. That was one of his last things he did.
Godfried, the entire
these were
cast
not
of
favorites
that you can't find.
No, you can't find it. But these are not favors. These were. The show was that
some
good.
Episodes. There's a rumor that there's like 8 episodes of it on Vimeo somewhere. That's posted. That somewhat of a web search should turn up, but I can't confirm or deny that.
Well, it was. I really enjoyed it, so I'm glad you guys did it. It was fun to see you guys do it.
Yeah, it was fun. And it was a great venture into like executive producing, writing, creating a show, doing all of those things. We did everything for that show with a great team over there, and they gave us a really good budget, and we had a really incredible time doing it, that opened up a lot more for me in terms of being taken seriously as a producer and getting my own projects going and off the ground, which always is a struggle in Hollywood, as you know. And
is that kind of where you're at now?
I produced a bunch of sci-fi movies for Sci-Fi Channel, like a half dozen or so of those, and then another half dozen or so movies for the Lifetime Movie Channel, or not for them, but with independent companies that sold to them, and then other indie films and some TV pilot type stuff. But it's a hustle. The indie world is a hustle, but it's a lot of fun, and I have a lot of more stuff coming out, which I'm very excited about. Some great films coming out too. A really great Western that's a thriller where I'm starring opposite Heather Graham and Tom Hopper, called A Place of Bones. It's directed by Audrey Cummings and produced by David Lipper, who's a wonderful producer and actor from back in the day as well. I did a film with him that's also coming out soon called Joe Baby, with Deacon Lockman and Harvey Keitel and Ron Perlman, which is going to be really interesting. I hope that turns out as well as I had on set doing it. It was a good project. And so those are coming out this year. And another one called I Feel Fine, which is a wonderful coming to a age movie about a tragic story of a kid who's obsessed with suicide. It's a tragic story, but it's very well done. That's coming out as well. And a film that I wrote and produced and am acting into called Deadly Justice with a great cast attached to that. Jason London, a good friend of mine who Dan may know also from Social Circus from back in the is acting in that, along with Brian Krause and Kelly Sullivan and some other great talents.
That's great. So it sounds like you've run the gamut of different types of genres, like from comedy to sci-fi to country western.
Yeah, well, that was important to me. Well, that was really important to me because, I was very concerned about getting typecast during Parker Lewis, and every hiatus I would do a movie of the week, some kind of dramatic movie of the week. And I did 3 really good ones every hiatus. The first one was My Son Johnny with Rick Schroeder and Michelle Lee. It was based on a true story about 2 brothers. One was really abusive and the other one ended up killing him, and went to trial for it and got off.
I remember this one.
All this stuff. So yeah. So I played I played the brother that kills Rick Schroeder's character and all that. So that came out to rave reviews, and that's at the same time Parker Lewis is playing. And then I did another one called For the Very First Time. There was a great coming of age drama that had a really good cast associated with that. That was a big CBS movie of the week, and then did another one after the third season with Donald Sutherland that was really rad called Life Force Experiment, and I got to work with that legend, and
Corin's worked with
and so
everybody.
that
I
that
mean,
that
Right.
everybody.
kept
I
me.
mean, sounds like it.
He's worked with everybody.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is.
No, you
Yeah,
gotta.
6 degrees of separation is pretty quick with me.
Did you have like after Parker Lewis kind of wrapped up, like what you must be what, college age at this point? 20?
Oh, he's 21.
21? So what were you
When I
doing
wrapped up
for
that show.
in your 20s? Like were you still doing a lot of acting or did you go to
Well, that's
college?
no. I wanted to. My daughter, my girlfriend at the time, the one that we were talking about earlier, Jamie. She got pregnant when the third season of Parker Lewis, and I was planning on moving to New York and going to acting school there because I always studied in acting classes my whole career, from Center Stage LA with Kevin McDermott to studying with Terrence Hines, where my classmate Stephen Dorff and I became very close friends, and we worked together on I Know My First Name is Stephen. He was in that miniseries with me, playing one of my friends in it. And we also were in that acting class together. And so, I attribute a lot of my longevity to remaining in acting classes, even though my career success could dictate that I no longer needed to study acting in an acting workshop, environment with actors who are just getting into it, or
Right.
whatever, you know what I mean. But I always maintained that connection, and that kept me very grounded. The fact that I was fluid between comedy and drama, and wasn't afraid to audition. I learned early on that putting my ego into the auditioning process was going to do nothing but get me further away from my next job. And so at a time period when I probably could have been fielding offers instead of going out and actively pursuing possible roles that I might not be right for or considered for, by auditioning for them, I was able to generate some work very quickly. Shortly after we wrapped Parker Lewis' third season, I went on to get cast in the miniseries The Stand by Mick Garris, the Stephen King miniseries, playing a really pivotal character of Harold Lauder in that. And again, acting alongside Laura San Giacomo and Rob Lowe and Molly Ringwald. And,
I mean, it sounds like you're really driven from a really young age with acting. I mean, like you kind of knew once you got into it that this was for you, and you've kept up with the craft. Just the names you're drawing. I'm like, how do you fucking remember?
He's worked with everybody.
I'm like, how the hell do you remember who the hell you were? I can't remember who the hell I live with half the time.
Yeah,
so
it's amazing. And let's talk a little bit personal life. You got married in the last year or two, right?
Yes.
You had a great Halloween costume this year, my friend.
Oh yeah, that was a blast. That was all my wife's idea.
They were Peg and Al Bundy this year.
That's great.
Yeah, it was great.
That's funny.
Yeah,
and
hilarious.
You recently just became a grandfather.
I did, yes.
Yeah.
Adeline Joe, my daughter, who was born, just during the final gasps of the last season of Parker Lewis. She just had her first child recently. She's in her early 30s, and a wonderful, beautiful daughter. She's married to a great guy, a serviceman in the U.S. Armed Forces,
Wow.
and a wonderful father, great husband from a great family. I couldn't be blessed more. And then my son Lucas, who was born 11 years after she was. The same mom, of course, same mom. I didn't take that
young,
magical route.
Like.
I was young. He's fantastic as well. I got two great kids out of that relationship, and now I have a wonderful new bride and wife, and we're having an incredible time now. We just got back from France together, as a matter of fact, yesterday. We met here in Florida when I was working on a film, and we happened to be shooting at her house. And we met really, really briefly, and I did the old school thing and got her phone number and just stayed in touch with her over a period of months. There was just a spark that happened there that I was very curious about. And even though we lived in different states and the chances were potentially slim that something may work out, there was something there, that there was a spark that happened in the short amount of time that we got to chat, that I just felt that was worth investigating and keeping kindling.
That's
It
awesome.
was a spark worth kindling. So after some time of dating remotely and from far away and whatnot, we decided to move in together. And
She
shortly
convinced you to
thereafter,
move to Florida, is what
You know
you're
what?
telling me.
But
it
listen,
wasn't difficult. It was a fantastic state.
Yes.
as somebody who's known you a very long time, I'm really, really happy for you and congratulate you. Really, really, I do. But this is the life of a working actor. I mean,
Yeah.
this is what it is. He has steadily worked with an amazing amount of people and people who are really well revered. And I can't thank you enough for being on the show, Corin.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man.
Yeah.
It's my pleasure. I mean, it's the time period that we grew up in, is long lost and well missed.
Yeah.
The new age is something that is not quite as simple and honest as our life experience was in Hollywood in the late 80s and early 90s and
It was a
mid
great
90s.
time.
Life was still small and simple, and Hollywood wasn't as bloated as it is today. And they didn't start that ridiculous bottle service at
Yeah.
the
Oh my
at the
God, we
club.
just
It's so
talked
funny that
about
you said
this.
that.
We
They
just
made you
talked
either
about Jesse.
either you have to spend $600 or $800 or go stand against a wall and
Yeah.
just sit there
Yeah.
and look around like,
Yeah.
hey, look,
Bottle service
I'm not
killed
willing to spend
nightlife.
$600 or
We
$800
had
for my good time tonight.
We had Bo Jesse on, and he was talking about the same thing, Bo Jesse Christopher. But what's funny is when I think of you and I think of nightlife, I think of like Spice. Do you remember Spice? We weren't, neither one of us, I think, were old enough to be in there.
None of us
Dublin's
were.
as well.
Yeah,
Dublin's.
Dublin's too. Yeah.
Well, that's super awesome. I know you've mentioned Corin a lot.
He's the
on
best.
The show.
He's great.
So
Honestly, I love Corin.
Yeah.
He's a great, great guy.
there's been
And then I
odes to
love you,
you.
Dan.
Thanks, brother.
Thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to meet you. And I'm not going to lie, I may or may not have had a crush on you when I was 12. So take that in and put it in your pocket. Anyway, thank you for joining us. And I also appreciate it. It's been kind of fun listening to your trials and tribulations through Hollywood and all the stuff that you're doing. It's amazing. And you're a young grandpa. So that's even better.
That's right. That's right.
Well, we will definitely keep in touch. And thank you guys for watching another episode of 90who10 with our fantastic guest, Corin Nemec or Joseph Nemec. I don't know. He's got a lot of names, but it's fantastic. And we really want you to like and subscribe and tell your friends and tell your family and maybe just have the dog listen to it when you're at work. Totally fine with us. And thank you again for joining us on this episode. We'll see you soon.
Thanks so much.